Hello, everyone. A warm welcome from Swiss Cognitive, screening out of Switzerland. It's amazing to see how many people all over the globe are sharing with us the experience. Thank you all for being now with us. We're going to have our 7th CognitiveVirtual, a virtual AI conference, bringing the AI community together with 15 speakers, 4 keynotes, 3 panels, and 1 common focus, AI. I'm very happy that this CognitiveVirtual in special will show you exactly how Swiss Cognitive is functioning. This is how we exchange on different experience with regards to AI, best practice, worst failures. How can we speed up the process by learning from each other? I would like to ask you all to use the Q&A to share your thoughts in the chat. I would like to say a huge thank you to all of you who, on one hand, are answering questions in the chat already during the sessions, people who connect with us after the sessions in the backstage rooms. I will tell this again after the speech, but please remember, you have the possibility to exchange with the speakers in the backstage rooms and go on the discussion. For those who would like to exchange on a more personal perspective with a speaker, you have the possibility to engage on a one-to-one, but please remember, we're actually a strictly non-sales platform. We want to engage on experience to support each other, so I would like to ask you to respect this. With that, I would also like to invite you at the end of our session around 7 Central European summertime for a last drink before our summer break. Wherever you are, it's going to be a coffee, a tea, a glass of orange juice, a Prosecco, a glass of wine, or a gin. So we really hope to be able to see you in the backstage room for online networking and exchange and have some fun. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce you to our first speaker, Kim Dressendoerfer, with whom I had the pleasure to be on stage last week, and I do really appreciate you, Kim. Kim is a technical specialist for data and AI at IBM and works especially with clients who need complex cognitive solutions to optimize their processes. She likes challenging, unusual problems and uses her creativity to create new cognitive architectures and solutions. Kim started solving issues early in her career by building her own cognitive search engine, which she showcased in their business thesis in the business computing. To have a balance in her busy business life, she also plays for the German lacrosse national team and is preparing right now for the World Cup 2021. So we wish you a lot of energy and power, Kim. I hope that I can, see this on TV. With that, for me, Kim, you are a very important role model for young women in tech. And I would like to introduce the audience to your recently launched initiative, A Woman in AI. So now, as a woman in AI, I'm welcoming you as a woman in AI on our global stage. Thanks, Kim, for being with us.
Thank you a lot. And thank you also for the really nice welcome. I'm going to start sharing my screen right away, and I hope it will be all visible for you. 1 second. And first of all, obviously, thank you a lot for letting me be part of this. Oh, 1 second. I think it was wrong screens. There we go. Now you should see it really well. For opening that I can open this amazing presentation here, and obviously be part of the Swiss Cognitive initiative as well. So I mean, the main reason why we're here today is probably because we want to know more about AI, and we want to kind of like figure out like where we're going and where kind of the future trends are. So from the easy perspective, I think like most of us are here because they faced a similar problem we see here in this picture. We want to know, like we want to solve problems in real time, and we don't want to waste time anymore. So that is probably also the main reason why we are here, and we want to know more about AI itself and kind of like where the new trends are. And when we talk about AI, we always like have this one vision in mind that it will solve everything. So basically what we think and what we kind of expect how AI looks like is similar to this. So we have an image of AI, how it can look like, and what we kind of expect based on movies and kind of like dreams we face. And I mean, from my perspective, I definitely dreamt of building that the same way because I'm also a big Star Wars fan. But there are some copyright problems, let's say it that way, that we just can't use what has been built before. And obviously, with the AI we are not there yet to build basically solutions similar to this. But we are not that far away. We are more like on a different kind of stage of also like figuring out how far we can use AI to kind of support us in problems, as showed earlier in the comic, to just support us in a daily life and help us solve basically complex problems, which we just basically don't have the time for anymore. So yes, I'm going to take you a little bit into space, and I'm going to show you a little bit what we kind of built in the team we have here in Germany and what we actually already can do with AI. So I would like to introduce you to our really cool little robot. Definitely not as cool looking as Star Wars, but kind of really cute. It's called Simon, and it's on our Crew Interactive Mobile Companion. And it's been built in cooperation with Airbus, DLR, which is kind of like the German NASA, and IBM. So just to give you like a little picture before and what has already been done, it is the first AI companion and the first AI software which is right now in space. So we reached that point that we actually have 2 Simons right now on the ISS. One is working with the Italian astronaut, and one worked with Alexander Gerst, which is our German astronaut. And the idea we basically had was kind of simple, but also in that kind of way complex, because the idea was basically to create a companion which is able to understand every issue and every data we have on the ISS, and then to answer basically simple tasks for the astronaut. Like you have to imagine how many books an astronaut has to understand and read to understand kind of the main structure. For example, if something is broken, it needs to figure out, okay, the astronaut needs to figure out, how do I even fix this? So the idea we had was to create the companion and to use that to basically just give a guide to the astronaut. So now you have to imagine, well, that could be quite complex because we're working here with people, like especially astronauts, who are probably the most skilled people on this planet right now. I mean, not anymore, but on the ISS. But we have to build something that needs to be flexible enough to answer tasks the astronaut actually like gives. So we used a lot of like basically most of the handbooks, which are like instruction, experiments, all that stuff, to kind of implement it to Simon and then make him interact with the astronaut. And I mean, if you think about it, what is the actual complex thing about it? It's not the AI itself at the end, which I mean, yes, it was kind of complex, but the most complex part we had here is to work with Airbus, DLR, and IBM. So we have 3 massive companies who are all working on one project together, and especially with something getting sent into space. So what that requires a lot of agile, like project management, a lot of like sprints. And I think one of the most parts which are really interesting that made that like the project so successful is that the team was mostly female. I just turn this in here. But obviously the main task the robot itself and the AI has here is to be able to kind of like understand the astronaut, what he's saying and what he's asking, and then to basically give the right answer back. So he's able to, like, for example, if you want to solve the Rubik cube, he's able to see that with his camera and help you solve it. That's the little game in the bottom right you see here. But basically what you also need is like, how do I fix this specific part? How do I do this part? Where do I find information to this kind of topic? So coming back to the comic I showed you at the beginning, exactly the same problem solved just in space. So kind of different approach of like what AI can actually do and what we see. And I mean, the other great thing here, what we did is basically kind of like an empathic new role. So we used speech and synthesis, so we can like detect the tone, how an astronaut is speaking. If we detect it's like a more sad kind of way, we can then make him react in more empathic way and more like, oh, should I play your favorite music? Oh, do you want to know how the weather at home is right now? And that is kind of like the really cool interactive new way. I mean, yes, we are not there Star Wars yet, but we are definitely going into that direction. And other thing is, which is really important, there's a lot of like learning you got to do. I mean, this is something hasn't been built before. So obviously there's a lot of learning by doing, and you can only be successful if you fail at one specific point to just do it better. And I mean, you probably now think, okay, this is something completely out of space, but we do also similar things on ground. So that's kind of like the fun thing. And I kind of want to engage you to just use your imagination and just like think about, okay, this is tools we already have. For example, we use this little robot. We want to use it in hospitals to just like guide patients to the right rooms and like help doctors to find the right appointment rooms and where to go. So what we built in this robot, for example, is a complete like automated 3D mapping. So it will guide by itself through a whole hospital, and it will understand tasks like, hey, I have an appointment with Dr. ABC. Can you bring me there? And he will be like, sure, I do. And he will drive in front of you and bring you to the right appointment. And we use obviously a lot of AI. So that's the other thing which is really important. When we talk about AI, it's just not one big solution which will solve all your problems. You got to think about a little bit like a Lego approach. You want to build specific tools above each other and kind of create your own custom solution at the end. And with that, I want to kick off this amazing Swiss Cognitive initiative and like start this day with you here, and hope I could kind of engage you a little bit in your imagination and you're ready to kick it off.
Thanks a lot, Kim, for the insights on kicking off our 7th virtual cognitive today. One question: if you could actually develop a companion, how would he look like?
Ooh, it's probably, I don't know if you all guys watched the new Star Wars, but the B2R2, I think is the name, the little ball with a cute little head on top. That's definitely like how I kind of envision something that follows me along and helps me.
Okay. There is one question in the chat that I would like to forward to you. Did Simon know where he was and which way he was facing?
Yes. So if you created a front and a back, obviously you kind of have to see it in the simplest way as kind of like an iPad facing you. Obviously it wasn't an iPad, but just trying to like make it like easy to understand. The back of it is basically the engine that flies around. So we use like air engines so it can like steer itself, because sometimes it gets the task of like, hey, can you film me in a 30-degree angle while I do this task? So he understands and adjusts. So wherever the camera is, that's going to be the front side.
Okay, thanks a lot. So thank you, Kim. You will be with us on the coming panel. And it's my great pleasure now to introduce you to Thomas Dressendoerfer, who will moderate the panel Standing at the Intersection of AI and Innovation. Thomas Dressendoerfer is the president of the Swiss ICT Investors Club the largest Switzerland-based angel investors club that invested into more than 50 startups last year. He holds a PhD in computer science from the ETH of Zurich, and he has worked in Silicon Valley. He helped to build up Google's engineering office in Zurich to more than 1,000 employees. Now, you guys need to know, for Switzerland, this is really a big number. And additionally, he has co-founded 5 technology startups after he had left Google. So Thomas has a vast experience, and he is our definitely right man to moderate this panel. On the panel, we have on one hand, Eric Nygren. He holds a Master's Science in Theoretical Practical Physics and a PhD in Computational Neuroscience. He has worked on mathematical modeling on the brain, deep learning, and traffic simulations. He currently works at the Research and Innovation Lab at the Swiss Federal Railways, where he focuses on application of deep reinforcement learning in the railway industry. He's passionate about open innovation and research collaborations, which help to accelerate the adoption of state-of-the-art research findings in different industries. With us, we have also Gregory Lukowski, who is an open innovation manager at Swiss Post. He is scouting for new ideas, building use cases with external innovative partners, and also responsible for AI within the Research and Innovation Division of Swiss Post. Gregory has a vast experience in various managerial functions in both multinational corporates and startups all over Europe. Endurance and craziness are required to develop innovation in a multinational corporate. Same we need also for innovation and AI projects and in sports. So likewise, Kim, Gregory does a lot of sports. He's a long-distance sports activities like Ultra Trail, Ironman, Patrouille des Glaciers, and this is where he gets the balance. Last but not least, we have Kim with us, who I introduced already with the opening. Thomas, thanks a lot for taking over, and it's my pleasure to listen to you guys now.
Concrete. And regarding open innovation, I would love first to ask Eric from the Swiss Railway that he could give us a definition of what open innovation means for him. Please, Eric.
Thank you, Thomas. Yes, open innovation for me is one of the key ways of actually accelerating innovation, be it in the form or in the area of AI or any other area. Open innovation is opening up some of your key challenges of the company to the world and gaining insight from domain expert and also non-domain experts, which have some very interesting insights into your challenges that you are facing as a company.
Thanks, Eric. Maybe we can hear another definition from Swiss Post, from Gregory, how he sees open innovation, because even though it's a standing term, some people might have slightly different meanings for it. So Gregory, tell us what it means for Swiss Post when you talk about open innovation. Yeah, you need to unmute so we can hear you better, please. Press the space bar.
Yep, can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Perfect. Yes, go ahead, please.
Yes, hello everyone, Gregory here. Thank you very much, Thomas. So open innovation at Swiss Post is really working with external innovation driver. And these ones for the post is mostly found with startups, but not also startups. Also, for example, universities or other big corporates with who we have a big network, and we try to innovate, find the innovation externally and bring it internally within the company, within Swiss Post.
Okay, thanks. Now, I would love to hear about the concrete project where open innovation has really helped to solve an actual business challenge. And I heard from Eric that he is running quite some challenges on very different subjects. Maybe, Eric, you can give us a concrete example where open innovation was useful for the Swiss railway company, SBB.
Yes, I'm happy to. So we're currently running already our third open innovation crowdsourcing challenge. That's one form of open innovation. It's opening up to the crowd. We formulated a challenge regarding Swiss train traffic control. So how do we manage the trains on the Swiss traffic network? This is a very complex problem, and especially it's very complex to solve at the scale of Swiss railway network, where we have more than 10,000 train runs every day and more than 800 trains running simultaneously. So it's a very complex problem. So this challenge has been posed now already the second time after we had very great solutions in form of software last time. We wanted to go even further in scaling and to see, can we find algorithms together with the whole world and technically savvy people around the world, as well as researchers from university, to solve that problem. And from the last challenge, we have already incorporated some of the algorithms that we got into our in-house research, and we're driving innovation projects based on all of those results. Today, try to build products out of that will then one day come into real-time or daily operations of the Swiss railway network.
So basically, you got both ideas and even partial solutions to your actual problem that you had to solve at SBB. It's very good to hear.
Yes, and you actually get something more. You get a deeper understanding of your question as well, because as soon as you formulate the challenge, people will point out that there is some flaws in the way you formulated it. So you will actually understand even the key problem, the key challenge you have. You will gain deeper insights just on what the challenge actually is. So you get these three things. You get solutions, you get ideas, and you get a deeper understanding of your challenge.
Sounds fascinating. Maybe Gregory from Swiss Post also has a concrete example where open innovation was used to solve an actual problem from the business.
Yes, indeed. So obviously at the Post, we use many scanners, and the scanners are actually very costly, and we need to change them pretty often.
So you scan the parcel addresses, or what type of scanners is that?
The barcode on the packages, on the letters when the postman delivered them at the doorsteps. But that's not a mobile phone, that's really a scanner. So it's a different hardware. And now there's a big initiative in the Post where every single employee will receive a mobile phone, and we can install then applications. And we did some open innovation screenings, and we find a startup from Zurich called Scandit, which is really performing extremely well in terms of barcode reading, even under the rain or when the barcode is not really properly put. The solution is really performing very well. And so we started 2 years ago, we did several pilots, and in 2020, we are currently implementing the solution.
So through open innovation, you also found access to startup solutions.
Exactly, yeah.
And now, how does it compare doing open innovation to hiring some freelancers that solve your task? Can you elaborate on that, Gregory?
So from our side, we really try to use startups as a way to get a solution that is already finished, a service that is almost taken from the shelf. Of course, when we talk about AI or data analytics, we need to train the algorithm. Having said that, they already have a strong basis. If you hire freelancers, then you just give them a concrete task to do, and maybe that could be even to develop the algorithm, which we don't want to do because sometimes it takes really several years to have an algorithm really performing well. So this is why when we do open innovation, we really try to get solutions that are almost finished.
Okay, that sounds quite fascinating. Now, when we set up an open innovation challenge at the company, maybe there's some things that one should watch out for, maybe things that one need to prepare for, such that this open innovation challenge actually yields some good results. And maybe Eric can give us some lessons learned on what has to be done right at the very beginning when doing open innovation.
Yeah, for sure. The past challenges, we actually learned a lot. So the main thing we learned is that you really have to formulate your problem or your challenge clearly. When you have worked with a problem for a long time, you get very accommodated to it, you get used to it, and you think it's very clear. But once you have to formulate this to an audience that is coming from a different domain and doesn't have the deep knowledge you have to be very specific. And this is something we learned early on, that if it's not specific, your answers that you will get and the ideas you will get from participants are not going to be well suited for your to solve your challenge. Then also you have to be aware not just how to formulate the challenge, but also what are your expectations? What is actually the answer you want to have? And there you have to be quite open that the answer might be totally different than what you were expecting. So as an example, in the early challenge, we were hoping for deep learning approaches to solve our problem. And actually the best solutions were actually using classical optimization. So it was classical algorithms beat the deep learning algorithms at that case. But then we realized we just had formulated also the problem in a way that it did not answer or ask the correct question. So that's why we have the second challenge running now, where we specify the question more precisely to get the answer to the problem at hand and not some other answer that we cannot use in the same way.
Okay, great. Now, Kim mentioned the robot which was sent to the International Space Station. I'm not sure, was any open innovation also involved in that robot project? Can you tell us?
There's some things I can't talk about. So I mean, like we try to, what we use from the AI side, that was all IBM services. So we used their whole IBM cloud catalog basically and try to bring in as much AI and natural processing at the end, which is like the main part of Simon. Because when we look at the robot, right, we have handbooks, we have tasks, we have basically someone speaking to it, and we try to find a way, or like how the IBM solutions that kind of way work is we use natural language processing to bring semantics into the text. So we teach basically the machine how to understand the text. And that is kind of like the AI which is built into Simon right now. So we use, for example, speech to text to bring the spoken word into the text form. Then we can translate it, and we can use machine translation basically to understand the task, understand basically, okay, what does the astronaut actually want? We then formulate and we kind of create a hypothesis about the answer. And then we use text to speech basically on the other way to bring it back in spoken format.
Yeah, so basically you already have a quite large tool set which you could use to integrate and then build this robot. And the robot itself, is it completely autonomous or does it talk to a data center?
So that's the interesting thing. So when you talk about that, right, the actual brain of Simon is in the IBM cloud in Frankfurt. And the really interesting thing is here is like, because you will think, okay, from Frankfurt all the way up to space, like how long does it take to actually answer? And it's only 2 seconds. Like that's how long it takes to go from space to Frankfurt, from Frankfurt back to space.
So basically you have a much bigger processing power than just the little robot on the ISS, because you connect it of IBM on the Earth.
So it comes a little bit more, yeah.
Yes, I learned that you were involved also with chatbots. And chatbots is an interesting thing because it could potentially replace rather boring work, like on hotlines and other places where we need a lot of people, especially in certain peak hours. Now, can you talk a little bit about chatbots that you've been involved in and how AI was used in these chatbots?
Yeah, so I mean, chatbot is kind of like the biggest part because right now companies are kind of focusing on kind of changing customer experience and kind of adapting to new generations basically, and how you got to change casual discussions. And obviously the availability of 24/7 is kind of the key. Like even if you talk about Simon, the main platform behind it is a chatbot, which just like grabs the backend data, which is then the handbooks of the ISS. So similar to the other robot I showed you, which is on space. So the whole interaction is actually just the chatbot, which is understanding the intent of how people could ask questions, like classifies them and kind of index them in that kind of way. So the answer is getting filtered through whatever you want to have at the end. And I mean, what Eric mentioned earlier is kind of really important, like having the real solution design at the end and kind of figuring out like what you actually want at the end is key, even for a project like a chatbot, because you can't just go ahead and say like, I want to have a chatbot for that, and that. It's like people ask questions in all different kind of formats. So you got to have something that is adapting and is kind of like smart enough to say like, okay, I don't think that was what, like, I couldn't understand exactly what you wanted, but this is the options I have. So kind of like also playing back and forward, because that's kind of like the beauty of creating a chatbot itself.
I assume that chatbots are also used at Swiss Post. Gregory, can you tell us about your experience with chatbots? Are they mature enough for prime time? Or how can you use them in an actual productive setting?
Actually, definitely. So we do have a chatbot both in Post Finance. So when you log in your account, you can have actually a chatbot initiating the conversation with you. And in the last couple of months, obviously with COVID, the utilization of the chatbot has increased by like 50% in terms of daily conversation that were led by the chatbot.
People first talk to the chatbot, and then later on, it's a mix of human answers and chatbot answers, or is it then handed over completely to humans, or how's the process?
No, 75%, as of today, 75% of the inquiries are directly answered by the chatbot. So he's able to ask following up questions, find the relevant information, and display the answer without the intervention of a human. This is still pretty recent. This is a really recent number. Obviously, the end user, as you mentioned, is asking questions in a different way. And on a monthly basis, we find new inquiries that are coming. And step by step, the team is integrating these new questions within the chatbot.
So maybe Kim can tell us how she ensured that the quality of the chatbot answers. What can you do to judge the quality of the answers, and how can you find out whether the answers potentially are not complete or inaccurate in some sense? How do you judge the quality of the chatbot, Kim?
So that's a difficult process, because first of all, you gotta understand that a chatbot won't be able to answer all questions. So we will always come to the questions which are basically out of scope. So instead of trying to build a chatbot that is able to answer all, the idea would be more like to create multiple chatbots which are like trained on specific areas. So for example, a chatbot that handles, for example, the banking topics. Like, for example, lost my credit card, but then there's also a chatbot that is available for like more specific questions, like, okay, can I get a loan out? Which is, it sounds similar, but it's completely different, like content at the end. And the approach at the end would be like, okay, you gotta invest time, because at the end, 80% of what we do is data pre-processing. So we got to invest the time in our job to find out, okay, what are the real questions? How could people actually ask the questions? What kind of semantic is actually needed? And then obviously the client needs to figure out what does he want at the end. Because if we don't clarify that right away, and we don't build it that way from like kind of like from the end solution of the perfect solution way back, we will have struggles along the way, and we just get lost during the process, because there are out of scope questions, and we got to prepare for that. So we got to train right, we got to invest the time, and also like a little bit like learning by doing, because you always find the way that you were not expecting. This is gonna like be a question, for example, people ask.
Yes, so some people have asked how adaptive is a chatbot and how much you need to train it in advance such that this really becomes a useful chatbot. Maybe at the Post Finance, I mean, how extensive was this training required such that the chatbot would give reasonable answers? Can you tell us something about that, Gregory?
So I was not involved directly in the project, so here I cannot give concrete numbers, but the project really started, I think, early 2018. And you can see that now in 2.5 years, it moved from the start of the project to being able to answer roughly 70% of the inquiries. And
And when people connect to this system, so this is text only, I assume, it's not voice? Or is it both?
Voice started a week ago, as far as I know. So actually, if you call our contact center, our call centers, you should be able to receive a voice chatbot starting to answer you. And here, obviously, we're going to use the technology that Kim described, voice to text. But we started with it in a live environment.
Are people made aware that they talk to a chatbot and not to a real human?
Good question. I think one can hear it, I would say.
Or like a robot in Star Wars.
Yeah. So,
yeah, we have to try it out, I guess.
Yes.
But I think people would expect that they know whether to speak to a real
I think so.
artificial intelligence system. Maybe that the line becomes more and more blurry if you mix basically both type of systems in the same channel. Then it's hard to say what is what, but maybe it's still good like it, so people have an idea of who they actually talk to.
I still think, however, emotions will still take a while to be really mimicked by an algorithm, especially with the voice parts. I think that's going to be tricky, and that's a challenge that AI will have to solve still in the future.
Now, in the very early days, there was Eliza, a psychotherapist kind of chatbot. Nowadays, chatbots have evolved a lot. Maybe Kim can tell us the latest stage of innovation of chatbots. Are they now really replacing psychotherapists, or are we still very far away from that?
I mean, talking about what Gregory said, like, yeah, we're going into that direction. We're creating chatbots that detect emotion and can answer based on that. For example, like a softer voice when a customer is extremely angry. We also have like empathic voice when someone said like, this is amazing. This is all stuff that is slowly adapting. And what you kind of said, like, we still are building the AI. So the algorithm is trained by us. So it's kind of like hard to just say like AI will just like replace every therapist. So that's something that is like a vague future. As we talk about like Star Wars again and R2-D2, like we are definitely not there yet. And it's definitely like a hard way to go there. And I think from the perspective of when and what we kind of have to do, I mean, it comes a lot with kind of training. I mean, for example, we just launched Project Debater, who's actually like able to understand the text and kind of goes from the perspective of, okay, I understand what you said, and I'm going to start debating with you because I do have more information than you because I have access to the whole internet. So this is like the new kind of generation of AI which is coming in. So I guess it's a definitely new approach, but I wouldn't say, at least from my perspective, that we're going to replace therapists. We might can create a hotline where you can have a first call and say like, okay, you need a therapist more empathic into that kind of person. So we find the matching one. So you don't have to do that research for you and have to spend all the money to try out different therapists, but more like into, yeah, we can find out more about the person. We can find out more. We can just like be like AI could be more helpful at the end to do your job and just be more efficient at the end, what we all want.
Now, some chatbots are highly specialized on very specific subjects. Now, if you want to replace basically a human conversation, you need to be able to switch between different domains. Now, how does this actually work with chatbots? Can you somehow make them smarter by using different types of them? Or how do you use different types of chatbots together somehow?
Yeah, I think that is a really interesting thing about the new kind of architecture we have, right? If you talk about IT structure or like IT architecture, back in the days, so like, let's say before I started working, it was really like structured and it had to be like that. And it was really hard to change. And normally you don't touch it again because you don't want to break it. So the new way is kind of like you have a lot of microservices, right? You can combine them. It's a more flexible architecture. And the cool thing is also like we have different kind of channels people can interact with it and call them basically. So I think, especially when you talk about specialized and non-specialized chatbots or like different kind of area, I think the idea is to really think about you build your own solutions with little Legos. because you want to have that. And you also like this, there might come the phase where a company is dropping a product, but you had a chatbot just related to that product. So you don't want to recreate the whole architecture, you just want to drop it. So that's kind of like the new kind of way of how architecture is built. And I think that is the really interesting thing about how we kind of face architectures nowadays. So you are more flexible, and you just have to think of, instead of building the whole solution, I think as Gregory mentioned earlier, you just like, you go away from having the whole thing. Like Gregory used different startups to kind of like pick out the best parts you need. That's kind of how the future is going to look like. So you build different services, you specialize them, and then you just call them via APIs, and then they work.
Now, yes, please. I saw that Gary wanted to say something, but let's just go to the question I had. Basically, when you have a chatbot for banking, there are some security concerns because the chatbot sees very private data. He sees basically banking information of lots of different users. How can you make sure that the chatbot actually is not the security issue in the end? Because maybe if you learn something while chatting about one customer, he potentially reuses that information for the next customer. So maybe we can ask like, yeah, the other customer you just talked to, how much did he have on a bank account? And then of course the chatbot should somehow reduce that answer, even though it might know it. Yes.
I mean,
Okay.
I mean that I can, like, it's obviously we have a lot of security. That is the biggest part, and that's why we also have a cloud center in Germany, because a lot of our clients kind of don't want to have data outside of Germany. There's different kind of authentication, and we can all build that in. We can connect it with phone numbers and all that stuff. And I mean, honestly, it works in space. The ISS is literally having a chatbot with us. So I think the data the ISS have kind of shows that it's really sensitive, high valuable data, and it works without any problems. So if you want to have the transcript, I can all send that to you in the chat later.
So you need to have really good architecture to prevent this data virtualization.
I mean, yeah, it is. It's. I mean, that's also like a cloud question. So you gotta need the cloud architect for that, who like answers also the part of like, okay, what kind of security are we building in? And especially when you lock in a chatbot, it's then directed to the authentication system.
Now, I'm not sure if SBB uses chatbots for running the train system, but if they're like delays, I guess you want to reroute the trains, and for that you also use artificial intelligence in one way or another. But I guess there are also safety concerns there. So is it actually possible to use artificial intelligence for such dangerous jobs as rerouting trains? Can you give us your view on that, Eric?
This is a very good question, and actually, you are never allowed to, or in a safety relevant domain, you're not allowed to attach AI systems directly. So this is the way it works currently. Also, now humans cannot interact directly into the safety system. So train runs in Switzerland, they run safe because there is an underlying security system that is always preventing collisions. And this cannot be overridden by humans, and this can also not be overridden by any AI or machine learning algorithm in the future. So it's safe for us to use it in that sense, that the safety of the customer is never jeopardized. This is always guaranteed through other systems. The other
normal systems that watch certain thresholds on top of the AI system. Is it right?
So it's normal systems that have been thoroughly tested and that have some basic safety rules that just say this rule can never be broken. So even if the AI system wants to rearrange the trains in an order that breaks those rules, it would just be forbidden. That is also happening today. But the other part, which is of course, is optimality. So how do you guarantee that the decisions you get from your AI system are optimal in the sense that your company wants it to be optimal? And that's a very difficult question to answer. And it's also difficult to answer for humans today. Like not every human decision is optimal today. So the trade-off is here today, and the trade-off will stay there in future. And we will have to put tests in place to guarantee that the algorithms behave optimally in the sense that we want them to behave.
Great, so we're almost at the end of the panel. Maybe as the very last thing, just very quick, what is still very hard to do with artificial intelligence? Kim, what is still very hard?
Build and R2D2. No, I gotta get rid of the Star Wars reminder. I think like to have that interaction where you like really let them reason and act completely and train basically and let them build by themselves. We are not there yet. It's a lot of still like our work and our training and work we have to put in, because we got to write at the end the algorithm.
Yeah. And maybe Gregory also has something which he finds still very hard to do with AI, which he loves. It gets better.
No, so I think emotions are definitely something where lots of startups and big corporates are already bringing solutions. But as soon as you look at really the impact that they have and how are they helpful, so far we are not yet there yet. But that will come in the next few years, I would say.
Awesome. And using last words from Eric, if you have something specific you want to add.
For me, something that they're not good at yet is really making decisions with long-term rewards. So taking decisions today that will have impacts in the far future. And I think that is something that is important for planning. And I think that's an area where AI is evolving quickly. And I'm hoping to see progress in the next few years.
Excellent. Thanks everybody for the good contributions. I guess the host is taking over. We'll go back to the main session now. Thanks.
Very much. Thank you, Thomas,
Bye-bye.
Kim, Gregory, and Eric for sharing your insights. And I hope you will be able to share sometimes after 7 o'clock in the backstage, having virtual drinks and exchanging even more. It was very nice having you all with us. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce you to our next speaker, Maya Reinshagen. Digital transformation, with all its challenges and opportunities, have been fascinating Maya over the last 20 years. She has a deep understanding of the drivers of marketing performance and metrics. Her wealth of experience in developing sustainable strategies and concepts for successful customer data-oriented marketing for large organizations have given her a solid grasp of technical feasibility and achievability. In her position as a director marketing automation at NetCentric, she drives this discipline with the company. And AI already has a huge influence on how we make the customer's journey even better. This is Maya brings her experience and new technologies together in her daily business. Maya will talk about unblurring the AI journey, driving value with the AI maturity and business modeling toolbox, and she and we inviting you to participate this project. Maya, the stage is yours.
Thank you very much, Dalit. So I'm going to try to share my screen 1 second. I'm not sure whether this is working. Yes, I guess it is, right? So yes, thank you very much for joining. Actually, artificial intelligence is the new C-suite imperative. That's the title of today's conference. And this title basically hits the nail on the head. And what we've experienced in our daily work is that many companies are quite perplexed about this imperative. This was basically the reason why we started to develop the AI maturity and business modeling toolbox, which I'm going to talk about this afternoon. So everyone is talking about AI. There is much half knowledge, and while some are excited about the possibilities, many feel threatened by the unknown. So companies would like to benefit from the possibilities of AI, but often they do just not know where to start or how to quickly implement a small but valuable use case with boiling the sea. So I've noticed that time and again, and not just me. And this was basically then the reason why about 1 year ago, in a conference at Swiss Cognitive, the idea was born to create a set of instruments which makes it easier to make those first steps and to answer all those questions. A toolbox which should quickly help companies to better assess the potential of AI and also to evaluate how they can leverage it concretely for their own purpose. We had, this was basically the starting signal for the development of the AI maturity and business modeling toolbox. And we had a visionary idea when we developed the toolbox. We wanted that our toolbox is similar to Alex Osterwalder's business canvas, some kind of the standard tool when it comes to shaping the journey to AI of a company. We were looking for a simple but comprehensive set of methodologies, something which is understandable by everybody and which allows you to really kickstart it, even if you don't have any knowledge yet at that moment. We also had the idea to, in contrast to existing maturity models, base our toolbox on empirical data and the experience we gained from already implemented AI projects, because we have the impression that we should allow companies to learn from what is already there and to leverage that knowledge and that experience. We also had the vision to allow our toolbox to grow. We would like to create a basis which would continuously grow through the use of the toolbox. We would like to gather data and thus over time provide even better foundations and also training data for our own AI models. So we don't just want to offer a toolbox which allows people to ease their way to AI, but we also want to collect data and generate training data and also use them for our own artificial intelligence model. The toolbox was developed over the past year, so we started around about 1 year ago and is now available in a beta version. We are currently actually still looking for companies to join our beta phase. And the toolbox is based on 5 modules, as I already showed on the slide before. I will now run you through all those 5 modules and try to explain how they go together, because we have a clear structure we want to follow in those 5 modules, which allows you also to always keep the structure and to always understand where you are at the moment. So the first module is called Understand. It seemed to be particularly important to us because, as I mentioned at the beginning, most of the companies thinking about introducing AI first have many questions. Therefore, the first module is a pure knowledge module. So you don't need to share data, you just read, you just consume basically. Module 1 approaches the topic of AI from 2 different perspectives. The first perspective, or on one hand, we try to introduce the user to the topic through possible questions. In many cases, these are irrational questions, but we made the experience that it's important to answer also those questions to provide the road to a successful implementation. So we will, in module 1, we also will try to approach the topic from a rather non-logical side. But what module 1 also bases on another perspective, let's say. We opened up the topic by possible added values. What are the possible opportunities that you could be offered if you leverage AI? So how can you gain value if you implement AI for your own companies? After the user has informed himself in the first module according to his needs, he should be ready to then move to the second module of the toolbox. The second module is called Assess, and it's basically a maturity assessment as you know it from other assessment as well. In this module, the user can evaluate his own company in terms of its maturity for the use of AI within the company. We have based this module on 5 proven drivers, which experience has shown to form the basis for a successful introduction of AI. As a basis for module 2, we use a proven software solution from Creaholic. So the advantage of that software is that the solution is extremely user-friendly for the user. It's very easy to perform that assessment. But at the other hand, it enables us also to collect data the user is entering. Of course, it's anonymously entered. So we are able to learn based on the assessments that users do with the tool, and then further develop our AI maturity and business modeling toolbox. So this is basically the main module of the toolbox, which allows us to collect data and to learn from what companies enter. After completing the maturity assessment, the user should now be able to develop his own business ID. For this purpose, we have developed a slightly adapted canvas based on the well-known Lean Canvas by Ash Maurya. The canvas should basically make it possible to relate the target image to the necessary requirements, which means after he has assessed where the company stands at the moment, he should also be able to define now what he could do based on his current maturity. And he should be able to define a challenge or a problem he already has and then formulate a potential solution for that challenge. In the next module, it finally goes into depth, because here we now combine the results of the maturity assessment with the formulated business objectives. So we take what the customer or the user has added in the first step in his AI maturity assessment, and all the stuff he has added in the canvas where he wants to go, which is kind of the target definition. And we show now what is the next step you need to take if you want to reach that goal. And this, again, we call it cookbook, is based on hundreds of projects we filtered out to see what you need to reach the next step. So this is, again, very data-based. We're looking for a lot of projects we have already implemented in many industries and try to filter out the important next steps by each of those 5 categories to tell the user, or to allow the user to understand how we can now take the next steps. This results in a master plan, or as we call it, cookbook, that shows which areas the company should now focus on in order to achieve the formulated goals. The goals are formulated on the business canvas. Again, we have based our analysis on the 5 known drivers of AI. For each of the categories, we defined 4 development stages. So the customer or the user sees, okay, in which of those 5 categories is my company, how mature? And this gives him then a recommendation for the next step. The module hence provides no review of what the next best activity is from level to level, which can be very individualized, of course. As soon as this work is completed, which is basically probably the most important and most time-consuming step, the toolbox will then also provide a methodology to easily structure and prioritize the next steps. It's just a canvas, actually, but it helps to focus on the most important steps or action points in the implementation of the project, but still not lose the sight on the big picture. So it's very easy to use canvas. There's no IT behind it. It's just a canvas which you can use to prioritize your next steps. And that's basically it. So it's very easy. It's a very easy toolbox. It's very easily understandable. We really wanted to boil down the complexity of AI and all those questions into a very structured, very maybe too simple approach. And we now want to learn whether we are on the right way with our toolbox. So as I said before, we are now ready with our what we call beta solution. And we're looking for companies who are now curious to find out more, to try it out, maybe even companies who have already implemented AI for their own purposes and who want to give us a feedback whether this toolbox helps and can be further developed. So again, I would like to invite you to join our pilot. Basically, everybody can apply for the pilot. We would like to test our hypothesis based on empirical data. So we need you, if you are interested in using the beta version and providing us with your data, but also giving, of course, honest feedback. If you are interested, you can just enter the link I'm sharing here, and we will then get back to you and make sure that we define the next steps. Thank you very much for your contribution. I'm here again sharing the team because it's not just me, I'm just presenting today. Thank you very much also for my teammates, Frank, Benjamin and Tiziano, who were supporting me very much in the last months.
Thanks a lot, Maya. And as always, it's always about collaboration, teamwork. Someone asked like how actually they can access and share the toolbox, and you just mentioned it. So I'll go to the next question. Someone asked, what is the maturity of the toolbox itself already?
That's a good question. It's hard to answer, actually. We have been working very intensively 1 year now on the toolbox, and we think that we are, at least in the cookbook part and in the assessment part, we're really mature. So we really were assessing many projects. We had very fruitful discussions internally with my cognizant colleagues who have implemented many projects. So we really tried to boil that down and bring it into the toolbox. We're still a bit working on module 1, which is more difficult than we were thinking in the beginning because it's difficult to bring all that topic into one module. But we guess it's quite at a good stage, but we're really interested to get your feedback.
Great, thanks a lot. So share your insights. If you want, then you can go to the backstage and have further discussion with Maya or access through the links. We are sharing these documents with you. Thanks a lot, Maya, and I hope to see you in our virtual apéro after 7 o'clock. Now welcome. Now it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Tristan Salomon. And I must say, what I really liked when I read your bio is that you actually said also where you failed. And this is exactly what we all need to do. We do experience, not only by best practice, it's actually also through failures, or even first through failures. Tristan holds a master in IT and entrepreneurship from Central Supplic in France. He has been working as an entrepreneur and an intrapreneur for multiple companies, helping them to sell their products and expertise. He launched a food startup, and his words, that magnificently crashed and provided a great learning experience. A Swiss subsidiary for a consulting company which was sold later, an IT consulting company which still exists, and Axom, which is helping industry to integrate AI into their process. So thanks a lot, Tristan, to share your experience on both sides, best practice and worst failures and help us to speed up our process. The stage is yours. Integrate AI into their process. So thanks a lot, Tristan, to share your experience on both sides, best practice and worst failures, and help us to speed up our process. The stage is yours.
Yeah. Thank you for the introduction. So maybe just to present rapidly Axum. So we're a Swiss startup. We founded the company, Julien and myself, about a year and a half ago. Just two people, just the two of us. So now we're 7. The adventure is continuing. And we are at the moment really focusing on visual inspection for manufacturing. This is really a field where AI applies properly, where you can use deep learning and where you have some nice business case. Just to give you an idea of what's at the moment visual inspection, when you start discussing with different companies, with industrial companies, there is 2 ways of doing visual inspection. The first way is manual visual inspection. So there you will have people who are spending their days checking products. So you just have the same products over and over and over again. It's very tiring. It's tiring for the eye, it's tiring for the brain. You need a high level of concentration because if, for instance, you're working for a pharmaceutical company and at some point you miss some particle in the product, then the patient at the end may die. So it's quite critical. And it still exists a lot. It's not something which is done a very tiny part of visual inspection. If you take, for instance, some Novartis site, they have on some of their production site 3% of the people who are still doing visual inspection. So quite a high number of people. If you take GSK, for instance, they used to have the big machine, the automated machine, and they came back to manual visual inspection because it's not doing well enough. If you take Nestle on the Nespresso capsules, you would say you have millions of Nespresso capsules produced every year. Of course, it's completely automated. Well, it's still not. There is some of their subcontractors who are producing the bugs that they use where they put the capsules. And in those bugs, you have some visual inspection done by human. And this has a cost at the end. This has as well an impact on the people who are doing that part. So this is one way of doing visual inspection. The other one is to use big machines. Those machines, they do not use machine learning, which means that you need to have a super stable process. So they're doing incredibly well. Like with one of those machines, you can inspect 100,000 vial, 1 million vial per day. So really high number. It's going super fast. It's taking lots of images. There is 2 issues. The first one is that, well, it costs a lot of money, but the main issue is the flexibility. You really lack flexibility with those machines because you need a really stable process. It means that if there is anything happening in the process, like if you have a vial which is fragile, it may break. If you have a change in the product, you need to reset the machine. You're going to spend a couple of months resetting the machine, doing the qualification. So you really lack the flexibility. And what we do to replace those machines is the following solution. It's something super simple, just a server, a screen to see what's happening on the server, a camera, and then a robotic arm who's able to move the camera around the piece. And it really changes the approach because it means you spend quite some time trying to build the software to have the brain, but once it's built, you can use very basic hardware. You can have multiple robots working at the same time. It means that if one of the robots were to stop because it's broken, then the production can still continue. It means that if you have another type of product, if you have the right software behind, it's going to automatically adapt. So it's really a different way of doing visual inspection. Maybe just to share with you a couple of business cases. So the first one is one of the business cases we are currently working on. So it will be on production the 10th of August with our customer. So it's in the watchmaking industry. We're in Switzerland, so we needed to talk about this industry. Just to explain you the business case behind, you have at the moment within the customer someone who is assembling the two components here, so the crown, and then you have this part as well, and they assemble this and they put all these pieces in a box. So this is the piece that you use to set up the time on the watch, and they put all these pieces all day long in a box, and at the end of the day, 1 hour before the day ends, you have someone who's coming, who's taking the box, and then who's going to split this box of a few thousand of those crowns into packs of 50 crowns, which is quite time consuming, of course. So you have some costs related to the time of just splitting in different small units of 50 crowns, but as well, you have sometimes some mistakes, because sometimes what they do is they do it using the weight, and the weight is not that precise. The piece is so small that you may have some differences, plus minus 5% of weight, which means out of 50 crowns, you may have +2 or -2 sometimes. It's due to multiple factors, but it means that if you look at the next step in the process, you may just have someone calling back and saying, hey, I'm missing one piece. Could you please produce one very fast, because we're not going to deliver a watch where the customer cannot set the time. So you have this process. And what we did, our answer was something really, really simple, really efficient. So just to share the video with you, you have the crowns here. And then what we do is we just count them on the screen. So it's quite stable, quite efficient. You just see at some point, because you have something with the hand. So we still have a couple of weeks to fine tune that. But basically, it's much more efficient. The solution is super simple. And I was talking about using standard hardware. If we just have a look at what we need some peripheral device to interact with the server, so a screen to see what's happening, some keyboard maybe, or some mouse, but something which is very standard, does not cost a lot of money. Then mass-produced lamp. You don't need some specific lamp, some industrial lamp, just something standard that you can buy at the supermarket. You need as well a camera. It does not have to be an industrial camera, does not have to be an infrared camera, just a smartphone camera is enough. Smartphone camera are really mass-produced. Hundreds of millions every year are produced of one type of camera, which means that the cost of design is really diluted between all those cameras. So then the price is quite low as well. And the thing which is a bit more expensive would be the server. But that's quite interesting, because it means that once this is designed, then we can duplicate it for, I don't know, another brand in the same company, for a supplier of this company who's having issue with delivering the right number of crowns. So then it really changes the approach regarding the hardware and how you're going to count. So that's the first business case. Maybe a second one I wanted to share as well, which is something we're currently working on, is quality control. So for this business case, we've already set up the software. We're currently working on integrating that into the manufacturing line, the production line. So this will be done by the end of the year. And what we're doing is detecting on those hard capsules the different defects, because when you put the two parts together, you may have some issues. So sometimes something big like that, sometimes it could be a black dot, sometimes it's crushed, sometimes it's something a bit smaller, like the ring on the right. And for this customer, for this pharmaceutical customer, they have the equivalent of one person all year long just looking at capsules. So it's actually two people doing that, and they're relaying each other for 6 months. And one thing which is quite important is that you need to have all the product inspected. And at the moment, nothing is done automatically, which is what I was mentioning before. You still have plenty of people just looking at product, looking at unit to understand, to ensure that there is no issue on them. If I just share the video of what we are doing, so this is the conveyor belt who's moving the capsules. So this was already existing, so we just adapt to the existing hardware. And on those capsules, what we do is have a first algorithm who's going to follow the capsules, and then a second algorithm who's going to find out the defects. And really the big strength of those algorithms is that you can have more flexibility. If we start discussing with big vision company, they will say that the image is impossible to analyze because you have so many reflex on the image, and the reflex is not stable. Sometimes it's big, like the one in the top center. Sometimes it's smaller, like some others. So it's really difficult to analyze using classic technology. And that's why you have those huge machines who are so complex to tune and to adapt to every type of capsules, because you want to avoid this flexibility. And as we have stronger algorithms, as we have a stronger brain than those machines, then it means that you don't need such a perfect image. You can have an image with small defects, small change. You don't need to always have the same light, always have the same reflect, the same angle. You really can adapt to the different things that are happening. And maybe the last business case, so going again, one order of magnitude of the number of people doing that is on the plates. So those plates that you see on the right are the plates that are used when you break a bone, a wrist bone. And at the moment, you have to imagine that in most of the company producing those plates, there is no inspection done automatically. At MetLife company in total, they are producing around 85% of the worldwide market, and none of them are having automatic inspection system. So it's done manually, which means that if you break your ankle, for instance, you may have one of these pieces which has been inspected during the night at 3 in the morning with someone very tired, someone who was having a hard time focusing, which is not very good from a quality point of view. And as well, one of the issues is that you need some time to train people to recognize the defect fast enough. So if your production is increasing and if you recruit more people, it's going to be a bottleneck for your company. So you really like this flexibility. And on this business case that we're working as well, so we did a couple of things there, and just to share with you. So this is a robotic arm, and we're using just a standard camera with a magnifying lens in front of it. You don't need high resolution camera, just use standard camera. You are inspecting the piece and then finding out the different scratches on the piece. So then you would not need to have some big things moving the pieces around. You just can have someone who's actually getting the different piece and putting them in a place where the robot is going to inspect them. And as well, one of the nice things for this company is that we are able to just have a new reference coming, and it's going to recognize the different scratch. It's not piece related, it's really related to a scratch by itself on a specific surface. So that's all for the presentation. If you have questions or things, and you don't have time right now to exchange with us, don't hesitate to come back later to us, to contact us later.
Great. Thanks a lot, Tristan. It was very, very interesting. Where do you see the perspective if you compare where you stood 2 years ago comparing to where you think you will be in 2 years?
Tristan, please.
I think I'm going to ask this at the backstage. Somehow he went out already. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Nicolas Bürer. Nicolas Bürer studied physics at the EPFL, the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne in Switzerland. After several years in management consulting and a young startups, he co-founded Movu, a platform digitalizing the moving industry in Switzerland. This has been acquired through a Swiss insurance group in 2017. Today, Nicolas is still the chairman of Movu. Since October 2016, Nicolas is managing director at Digital Switzerland, empowering Switzerland to be a leading digital innovation hub worldwide. So no wonder Nicolas belongs to one of the 100 who is who of the Swiss economy in 2018 as well as in 2019. And in 2018, he has been awarded as a Swiss Business Angel for the year. So now, Nicolas, you're a passionate entrepreneur and startup investor with a vast experience in both worlds, in the corporate one as well in the startup one. It's my great pleasure to have you now for an interview. In your role as a CEO of Digital Switzerland, your mission is to make Switzerland a leading digital innovation hub worldwide. You connect corporate CEOs, politicians, startup, and SMEs. I really liked your comment in one of your interviews about cooperation, where you stated startups needs enterprises and enterprises need startups. What are the main differences between the corporate and the startup world with regards to empower innovation?
Hi, Dalit. You're asking me the question, is that correct?
Yes.
Sorry, I had some technical issues with the tone at the beginning. Can you please repeat the question?
Absolutely, I'm happy to. And by the way, this shows how fundamental still everything is. I just love it. So in your role as a CEO of Digital Switzerland, your mission is to make Switzerland a leading digital innovation hub worldwide. You connect corporate CEOs, politicians, startups, and SMEs. And I really liked your comments in one of your former interviews where you stated startups need enterprises and enterprises need startups. So my question is, what are the main differences between the corporate and the startup world with regards to empowering innovation?
Okay, in any case, I believe there are like two worlds, of course. You have the corporates, they have a strategy over 5 years, if not longer. They have a governance, they have compliance, they have some processes before starting something innovative. And then you have the startups, they don't know if they will survive the next 6 months. So they have to be innovative today if it was not yesterday. Any more collaborations, investment, acquisition of corporates and startups. They should learn working together much more for the better of both.
Thanks a lot. And this is exactly what also we are doing and why we love this exchange. Thinking of all these global corporations and also on national level, why is digital literacy about AI now so important on C-level?
Okay, Dali, there was 2 weeks ago a statistic done from a Swiss university regarding C-level and board members in Switzerland, but I believe it's worldwide the same. And the statistic was terrific. They said, especially board level has the opinion they don't need to know so much about digital because digital is not part of the strategy. Some people within the organization can take care of it. I don't know if these companies will survive the next years. I'm not sure. So AI as one of the biggest pillars of digitalization should be part of the strategy. That's it. So and it should be part of a board meeting. And I don't know how many companies today are really, maybe post-COVID, it's different, but how many companies in the board level, executive maybe more on a board level, are talking about digital and AI strategy. And I think the difference between the winners and the losers will be this one. This one of the differences: who is ignoring the topic, who is delegating the topic, and who is taking the topic seriously. So it's about literacy. It's about having board members who learn about digital and AI, or it's about hiring new executives and new board members who take the topic with them. Very important.
Thanks a lot. So how do you think can we onboard people, young people like Kim? We just heard her. I mean, she's even not 30, driving digitalization, especially AI, very strong. How can we make sure that especially corporates are onboarding young talents, showing that they're open, that they're willing to learn, about digitalization, the potential of AI, and have a cooperation within the company with the young talents, as well as, let's call it, the old economy?
One of the options, there are different options, but one of the options I like is, as a corporate, you don't need to develop today an AI strategy because for the next 5 years, because who knows where we're going to be in 3 years with AI and digital. Let's face it. If you see the difference between 19 and 20, it's quite amazing. So don't make a plan for 5 years. You will fail. I recommend corporates, and especially with this young talent, to start a pilot. Make a pilot. Make something small, but let these people explain you how you can start something small, over 3 months, and learn from it and see if you can deploy it to your entire organization. This is what we try, to say also to the corporates. Don't make a 5-year strategy about AI, please. Make a first pilot, 3 months, with these young talents, and learn from each other together.
For this, we need a lot of courage. I absolutely agree with you, Nicolas, and I hope that a lot of C-suites are hearing that. We normally say that innovation eats core business. It needs a lot of courage to stand up and say, okay, let's do a pilot, let's try, let's engage with startups, let's engage with young talents. What would you advise these corporates? How should they do these small little steps to bring the startups or young talents in, and especially to allocate budget for such innovative projects?
I believe, and this is maybe nothing new, I believe the successful C-level are the ones who are constantly disrupting their business. That's it. And not a bit, but completely disrupting the business, that they are doing something different in 10 years. And that's the mindset. That's a mindset. And if a C-level or C-suite is not able to put some budget, and we don't speak about 100 millions, no? It's a pilot on a site, in a lab, for example, leave these young people work in the organization to disrupt your organization. Typically, having something data-based, AI-based, might disrupt your processes, your organization. So leave them working together, maybe a kind of secret place even. You need courage when you're a C-level and you want to disrupt your place. This is what I will do. Leave them work in a secret place and let them do a pilot with AI, and you will take it from there in 3 months, and you will see if this is the future of your company or not. I believe it will be.
So if I understand you right, we actually have to change the DNA of the C-suites of today to be more entrepreneurial.
More entrepreneurial, more courageous. Of course, corporate as many, they have compliance, they have so much pressure to keep their P&L, so that's clear. But on the other side, look how to disrupt yourself. Because if you don't do it yourself, the young, wild entrepreneurs, future unicorns will do it. So either you do it for your own company or you will be disrupted. So that's the future.
Absolutely. Talking about that, I would like to elaborate a little bit more about how do you see the collaboration between society, business, research, academia, and the government?
I mean, in general, I believe that the future is all about alliances and collaborations. You know, in a time where the giant companies of the world are so powerful, in a time where technology is going so quick, and COVID also accelerated this process, I believe that the future successful environments, not only companies, but environment, it might be a country or an ecosystem, are the ones who will learn to better collaborate, government, startups, academia, and economy together. I believe this is also what we try to predicate is, guys, sit down, work together, and look how we can make the ecosystem stronger. It's about jobs. I believe a lot is moving worldwide. There is one point we should not neglect, and we see it in different countries right now, is a kind of anti-digitalization in this society. Many people in this society are fearing digitalization. They are fearing to lose their jobs. And there we have to be careful not to have a kind of worldwide anti-movement, you know. We see that, for example, also in Switzerland with the new COVID app, but also in Austria or in Germany, we don't make it to reach the 60% of the population because the people are fearing like to give data away. In the meantime, they're using WhatsApp, by the way, which is giving much more data further. Huh? But still, there is also an anti-5G movement. So we have to take the society into account and not just say, you know, they are coming anyway. They won't come. I think on this one is a challenge worldwide. We have to take very, very seriously. Take the people with us on the journey so you don't have a revolution. No? Very simple.
Absolutely, absolutely agree with you. And I think if I may take the chance and really ask the people out there, it's up to us to support the governments all over the globe and make sure that we can win the battle against these viruses. And as you said, Nicolas, we're sharing our data through so many applications. And now we have something that is really strong and that actually can save lives. And we are struggling to use these COVID apps, something that I'm on a personal note can't understand, and sharing your thoughts. Now, before I'm coming to some questions out of the audience, Nicolas, we in Switzerland must find our top topics where we can be leading worldwide. On one hand, we as Swiss Cognitive are driving the global AI hub out of Switzerland. Israel is definitely with the topic of cybersecurity, and other countries with their topics. So in your role as a CEO of Digital Switzerland, your mission statement is making Switzerland a leading digital innovation hub worldwide. Now, how interesting is Switzerland's startup scene for foreign investors?
We're growing very quickly. We had last year more than 2 billion invested in the Swiss ecosystem, therefore number 5 in Europe, top 15, 20 worldwide. We were only at 300 millions like 5 to 7 years ago. And I think we have about 2,500 startups, and we are very good in deep tech topics, you know, in B2B business model, AI-like, data-like, drones, robotics, advanced manufacturing. We have a vibrant ecosystem, and I believe everything around AI blockchain for sure is a strength of Switzerland. The other one is everything around hardware and software. We are also very good. So we are trying to position the country in some topics where we might be one of the leaders in the next decades. And definitely the ecosystem is growing fast. And we're one of the most promising, I would say, in Europe, behind UK, France, Germany, and Israel.
Thanks for that. So we're going to be the next startup nation of the world. And I would say we're going to invite all the interested people out there after Corona to visit Switzerland and see there is a lot. We're doing really good, guys. Now I would like to hand over some questions to you from the Q&A. First of all, it would be great if you can share the copy of the studies that you mentioned at the beginning. Second, what are the left barriers of implementing AI and innovations from C-level executives? What are those holding them back to invest more into synergies between enterprises and startups?
I'm not sure I've understood the question, to be honest.
Shall I tell you something? I'm just going to forward it to you on WhatsApp, if we may share.
Yes, you're sharing me some data.
Oh yeah, Nicolas, I just send it to you. This is how we can actually benefit from the technology.
I believe the worries is on one side internal politics, of course. When you invest in AI or in startups, and I've seen that myself, one of the startup I founded has been acquired by a corporate, and you need some decision takers who are always pretty much deciding against some voices internally. When you invest in new business models, in new technology, it means you don't believe in your core business, which is true, because again, you want to disrupt yourself. You have to. And so the biggest worries is you play or you act against a part of your organization. That's the reality. And I believe in many companies, it's a tricky one. As a C-level, you don't want to do something against your organization. That's why it prevents many from acting. And that's why you need lots of courage as a C-level, CEO, to go with startups, to acquire startups in new business models, or to go for new technology. It really needs, and in the future even more, it will need lots of courage, much more than what one can think. Because you play against your organization.
Absolutely. And I think one additional very important thing is that we have to accept that without failures, we can't achieve, because there is all about experience. And I think this is also a topic at C-suite level, especially, that need to be accepted. I'm just sending you another question on WhatsApp. While you're reading it, I'm going to read it to the audience. How do you find balance between 5-year long-term strategy and 3-month MVP pilots? MVP, for those who doesn't know, minimal violent projects.
I didn't want to say you don't need a strategy anymore. You need somewhere a vision. The best entrepreneurs in the world, Elon Musk, he knows he will go to Mars in 10 years or less even. So you need a vision somewhere, of course. But I believe don't fix your strategy for 5 years and believe it's the one you will implement, because it won't. So if you want to make a 5-year plan, why not? But be ready to revise it every year and be consistent and really rewrite it if it's necessary. So I believe, the first MVP 3 months might be complemented with a longer project of 1 year, for example, something more consequent. And your 5-year strategy, reduce it to a 1-year plan, which you review every year. Then you have the 1 year, it might fit better together, if you see what I mean. So it's all about continuous improvement at the end of the day.
Thanks a lot, Nicolas. The last question before we unfortunately have to finish our discussion, which I really enjoy. What is the Swiss policy for international startups?
a Swiss policy for international startups. So in general, we highly welcome international startups. Organization, of course, wanted to have a subsidiary in Switzerland. I don't see any issues or concerns about this one. If you're an entrepreneur from Europe, we highly welcome you in Switzerland to found a company and to live here. If you're coming from outside of Europe, we have a contingency of 5,500 people per year, and not only for startups, by the way, but for the entire ecosystem, the entire economy, which in my opinion is far too low. As we all know from Silicon Valley, half of their founders are not American, are not only American, and it's a political topic, but we should welcome many more entrepreneurs from outside of Europe coming to Switzerland. We're working on it on the political scene. We would like to increase the contingency to have more entrepreneurs, so private people coming to Switzerland. But as an organization, it's not a problem to open a subsidiary in the country, of course.
Thanks a lot, Nicolas. As I know, unfortunately, you can't stay now for the backstage, but people, you can reach out to Nicolas if you have a specific question, especially if you're interested in collaborating with Switzerland, with the Swiss startup scene. And now, thanks a lot, Nicolas. Hope to see you soon. Stay healthy and have a great summer.
Thank you, Dalit. You too. Bye-bye. It was
Thanks,
a pleasure.
bye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye.
So now we're heading to our second panel, Enhancing the Service Industries with AI. I would like to introduce you to our moderator, chair of the session, Alex Zinder. After 20 years of building software for large financial and capital markets, Alex took the leap from New York to Zurich. So you see, there is worthwhile also to come to Switzerland. There, he focused on helping enterprises deploy emerging technologies at scale. He's an expert in data management and distributed systems, and an enthusiastic student of machine intelligence and local food cultures. Alex spent 12 years in tech leadership roles at NASDAQ and holds multiple patents in distributing system architectures. He's a true believer in human-centered design and sailing as a team-building exercise. So here, Alex, I guess that you and Andy will once go sailing together. With Alex on the panel, Maya will be with us, whom I introduced already. Then we do have Jürgen Pulm. Thanks, Jürgen, for joining us. We know that your schedule is definitely very tight, and it's my great pleasure to have you once again with us. Jürgen received his PhD in banking from the University of Paderborn in Germany and an MBA from the University of New York at Buffalo, where he was a Fulbright scholar. He has been Chief Digital Information Officer for private banking since the end of 2014. In his role, he oversees IT, banking operations, and change management for NatWest's private banking entities, and is also the CEO of RBS Services in Switzerland. Previous roles include being the Chief Technology Officer, Head of Technology Trends and Mobile, Chief Operating Officer, as well as a Deputy Head of the management team at its Swiss branch. Before joining the RBS, new name, it's the NatWest Group, in 2006, he served as CIO at Julius Baer Group, a Swiss private banking. Jürgen met his Singaporean wife at Buffalo, New York, and he enjoys doing handiwork, such as putting in wood floors. He is married to a Singaporean Chinese and is raising 2 boys. He loves to play golf and obviously Chinese food. So I guess you also enjoy it now with all the crisis, the time having you boys with you at home. Then we do have Luc Girardin. He's head of AI and analytics at Cognizant Switzerland. He's a transformation enabler for companies who want to shift their business to the new paradigm of the digital economy, cross strategy, design, technology, and people. He supports medium and large-sized companies in their journey building data-driven businesses. He's also supporting the startup community within Ventures.ch, ETH, Business Plan Competition, and as a Europe chapter head at Columbia University's venture community. His background combines art and science, having worked for both Art Basel, the global leading art fair, and IBM Research, the world's largest private research institution. So now I'm handing over to you, Alex. Thanks a lot for chairing this great session.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the warm introduction. And I think I speak for the panel that we're very happy to be here today, even though virtually. We have a very diverse panel today, so we're going to cover hopefully a really nice breadth of topics. We have representation from digital marketing, financial services, and we'll touch on strategy and technology. This should make for a very dynamic discussion. We do want to, however, focus on several specific topic areas. This one specifically is around the impact on business models in the service industry of AI and new emerging technologies in the AI space. We'll touch upon delivery and adoption, and also talk specifically on some of the technical drivers and challenges that expose the space. So let's get started. Luke, maybe we'll start with you. To begin, it would be really helpful to get a good overview of the impact that you have seen either through Cognizant or some of your customers that AI has had on the business models in the services industry. I think you're muted. Thank you.
Yeah, I think now in the AI space, companies have very diverse level of maturity. So I think it really depends what maturity level you are talking about. You know, some companies are really looking at transformative approach where they really want to rethink their whole business. And some companies are looking at more tactical performance improvement project, which is actually the majority of companies, especially in the large scale organization. So if you're looking at performance improvement types of initiatives, then basically typically you work with heat maps on your operating model, and you identify the components where you want to differentiate. So, you know, if you're in a bank, for instance, your accounting might not be helping you win against your competitors, but probably your growth strategy will. So that's, you know, the components where you want to achieve impact. And then you look also on the other side at what technology can bring. On combining that, you basically identify some hotspots, some areas you want to investigate further, and then you prioritize your use cases or your areas and move them into a funnel. What is, I think, more and more interesting now is that some companies go further than that. We see that a bit in the service industry, but we've seen that for many years now, for instance, in industrials. Where companies are not only using AI to improve their performance, but are using AI as a core part of their business or as a way to sell either data or intelligence. If you look at the aerospace industry, for instance, companies like Airbus or Boeing, when they launch a new plane, they gather a lot of data from the plane, from IoT, and then they manage their fleet. And they provide services to the airlines with data. So for instance, for the A350, for instance, they have the view on all the breakdown of all the A350 of the world, which the airline do not see. So they have a much better sense on when an aircraft will break down, and they can therefore optimize or provide advice on intelligence to their clients. So it's really, they're not selling only plane, they're also selling intelligence based on data. And I think more and more the service industry will move in that direction. There are already things going on. But to achieve that, obviously, it's very different techniques than performance improvement types of techniques. You need to build a whole business model, build a new operating model. So you can use techniques, for instance, used in startup, like Lean Startup or Business Canvas. I mean, there are many of them.
Great. Thank you very much. I think that's a very interesting thread to kind of capture that the evolution of the usage of data and the sharing of data across the services industry as a whole is going to be a really significant catalyst for how this progresses. We'll touch on that probably a little bit later in the discussion. And I think you also mentioned that it's fair to say that the industry as a whole is relatively nascent as far as the maturity currently in this space, which leads us to the next question. I think, Maya, you gave us a really great overview on the AI toolbox that you guys have pulled together. What are some of the more kind of tangible, viable use cases that you have been able to put through the toolbox, and how are you able to really assess them for relevance, right, and impact? Sorry, muted again. Perfect. Oh, no, that's weird, actually. Yeah, maybe it's your headset? No? Absolutely, we can come back to Maya. Jürgen, actually, to pose the question to you a little bit, we're both from the financial sector in our backgrounds. And traditionally, the financial sector has been relatively significant laggard in adoption of new technology for a variety of different reasons, right? Regulation being one of them. And secondly, we deal with money, which is obviously a very sensitive subject for most of us. So can you give us a little bit of an overview and some of the adoption challenges that you guys have faced at NatWest, as far as how do you approach it and what are some of the organizational kind of bottlenecks that you've experienced?
Yeah, so I mean, I can talk for private banking, which is actually with the lead by Kutz in the UK, yeah? And we have had quite a little bit of experience with that and tried to do that. And to see, where we got to where we are, it started a little bit top down, bottom up, yeah, and that helped actually implementing AI. We started actually with a top down strategy where we said, where do we need to be in an environment and an economy which is going to be disrupted, especially the financial services, in a 5 to 7 year kind of time frame in order to still be competitive. And if you look at private banking, and you might call that laggard a little bit, but I mean, the model is going to be also then kind of personally serviced but digitally enabled, yeah. And one of the things which you need to bring in is really make sure that you move the business model from kind of a very service oriented to what I call IP driven, yeah. So the relationship right now is very strong between the private banker and the client because there's a great service being provided, but you need to increase the lock-in for that, yeah. And the challenge you face in that is that you need to have behavioral changes in your sales force, in your advisor force, which needs to adapt these technologies. So it's less a technology challenge at the end. It's kind of a behavioral challenge. It's a way of putting different tools in there. And the way we approached it was kind of to say, how can we match the top-down strategy, which is kind of really putting additional IP into the front line, putting also the performance improvement tools, which Luke was talking about in there, with kind of a bottom up, kind of almost 2 by 2, kind of where we have most impact, and start with the stuff where we have impact first. Yeah. And one of the things, if you talk about challenges which we had, is kind of we identified topics with impact, and then as it's a very, very small marketplace in which we are actually navigating, it's to find the right company which has the right skill set of combining the business expertise with the AI toolkit in order to create impact. So one example I can pick out on that is we looked at a back office process, and anti-money laundering is a big topic in banks, yeah. Mm-hmm. And it has a big potential in terms of taking AI as a tool in order to actually make that process much better for the client, improve the client experience, but also make it much more efficient. The challenge we had was kind of how can we get this bridge going between the business knowledge and the technical knowledge to bring the AI brought up to the speed to which we and to the maturity which we needed. And we made good progress on simple situations. So we ended up with about 80 to 90% of match of AI decisions to human decisions. Where we then had a real issue was kind of very complex cases and bring the complex cases to life, because the observation points we could give to the machine were just too few for the machine to learn enough to come up with a good result. Yeah, and so that's where the challenge is a little bit. It's about behavioral adaptation. It's about size of the business and bespokeness of the business and bespokeness of the different questions you have to ask the AI machine to answer. And that's a little bit in some way where we are.
Yeah, that's a very interesting point. I mean, there's definitely a significant human element to the adoption and also to the kind of informing the process itself, right? Because it's the process experts that have to create the requirements and the right models for these solutions to actually be implemented. And it usually comes down to the operational teams. Maya, do you have your sound working? Nope. Oh, there we go.
Great.
There we go, much better. We'll come back to you in a second. So just to continue this interesting aspect is that it usually is the operational team that kind of sits at the core of these types of initiatives. And frankly, you know, if in financial services, being familiar with the back office processes, it's challenging to how you kind of frame these types of initiatives to the team itself. Right. So is there anything that you guys have tried as how do you position this, right? So the initiatives comes from the C-suite, right? So we have to modernize, we have to automate these processes. And now the operational team is sitting on the body of knowledge that is required to implement these automation processes to mirror their currently either manual or kind of fragmented process flows that they have today. How do you position that to the operational team to make it something that is viable, interesting, and engaging for them to participate in, versus just, you know, the human element is going to say, like, this is going to cut costs and cut jobs, right?
I think the question of positioning is to engage with the right people in this operation. Yeah. So I have my operations hub in Bristol, yeah, where it's about 350 people, yeah, and not everybody is focused on his or her own process. Yeah, there are quite a few people who want to grow with it. Yeah, and to see that as a real opportunity to actually learn something new, do something exciting. Yeah, and obviously we created a team of 5 to 6 people in this organization who is really interested and up moving, and they were part of that initiative. They also then teamed up with their colleagues and have the trust of the colleagues in order to pull out that knowledge. And also the people who are working on the core process know that a certain part of the stuff is not going to go away anyhow, and it frees them up to do more interesting work. So it's about upselling, making it more attractive, getting the people who are the change agents in the organization mobilized, integrated in that task. And there's even a little bit of excitement around these activities. So the people are in there, are the fastest moving organization. We set up something which we called the Client Accelerator Hub, and it says that what's on the tin. Yeah, it actually is something where we say, here we do in short sprints stuff which helps us to bring value to the client out of an operational perspective. Yeah, and they got a good marketing internally in the operational teams because they want to be part of that, but also towards the business, because the business could see we take up pain points, and within 2 to 4 weeks they get a solution for that with this tool set. Yeah? And so it's about, you know, positioning it right, getting the right people engaged, and then selling up the value.
Makes perfect sense. Get the right stakeholders in place, and then engagement is the key driver. Luke, from your experience in kind of engaging with a wide range of customers, what have you noticed are kind of the differentiating organizational structures that help facilitate this in the right way?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, because right now we're in an era where AI is very visible. You know, you have to make AI very visible. You put it in an innovation hub. You communicate a lot around it, and so on.
But in a way that isolates it, right? Which is still somewhat counterintuitive.
In one hand, it isolate them. You put a lot of flashlight on them, but sometimes it moves them from their purpose to deliver business value versus basically communicating. I've seen AI project with the corporate communication team involved and so on. So there are lots of these projects. On this project, typically, are stopped after a little while. I think the models that are more effective are typically when AI is hidden, when it's kind of embedded into a larger solution that is solving a business problem. And that will go quite far. If you look, for instance, at approach from some venture capital fund, for instance, like Sino Venture Capital, they sort of stop investing in pure AI player because they need to go through X pilots that are stopped, that do not scale, and so on. So, for instance, if they want to position in image recognition for cancer, they will not buy a company that does AI recognition for cancer. They will buy clinics. Then they will embed actually this AI solution as well as other AI solution, as well as other technologies to improve actually the performance of the business. At the end, that's really what matters. Whether you use AI or not is not really the question. It's really how much you manage to improve business and if you have the right tool to do it. So on your suite also, for instance, in the software industry, if you look, for instance, at Salesforce, with Reinshagen, for instance, most people don't know it, and therefore they use it. While if you tell people this is AI and so on, they're going to be very excited in the first step, but then very scared. And typically, you will face the typical barrier that you get around change management, around fear, and so on. So that's the way I see it evolving now.
Thank you, Luc. So Maya, coming back to you for a quick recap of some of the use cases that you guys have seen in the specifically kind of the data-driven marketing aspect, which is very interesting for this field.
Yeah, actually, we were not focusing on data-driven marketing use cases. I'm working for Netcentric, which is a part of the Cognitive Digital business, but the main input from what we've done, especially for the module 4 of the AI Maturity and Business Modeling Toolbox, was mainly done by my colleagues who are working at Cognizant, mainly Aurelio D'Inverno and Nimesh Mistry, and they were really able to provide lots of existing data out from many projects which have been already implemented at Cognizant. I don't know all the details, so they kind of tried to get an overview of all what has been done already, and then concentrate it into what we are calling cookbook. So there's a wealth of experience which was taken into consideration to bring that value in a very, very condensed form. And of course, we know that this is not it's not everything. So you're not able to kind of do everything based on just a toolbox. So you will need help. You will need more information. You will need probably also industry specific guidance if you want to run through the toolbox or even then run a project. But it should help you to kind of kickstart it on a very, very generic basis.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. Any specific use cases that stand out for you from that process, or? Actually, I was not really part of that specific work. This was really mainly done by my Netcentric, by my Cognizant colleagues and Frank. So I just have seen the overview, not the details. No, that makes perfect sense. It's important to have the right frameworks in place to be able to facilitate these processes. So maybe let's take a little bit of time now to discuss of how do you take some of these strategies that we discussed so far and some of these frameworks and actually embed them in your technology organization, so the organization can actually empower and create the right software and the right capabilities to support these types of projects for AI and for robotic process automation. So actually, let's go back to Jürgen for a second. What are some of the major ways that these tool sets impacted your technology organization? What are some of the capabilities that you guys had to develop to be able to support this?
So actually, what we did, so as being part of a larger group, we have a standardized tool which we're using, and we did two things in order to for the robotic automation to embed that, So the one thing is we started to recruit and build up people who actually know the tool and are able to deal with the tool. But more important was to bring together a very small team of people who really understand the business and can take the business challenge up. And this is a combined team we set up as an agile scrum team. And they actually then were exposed to the business. And the way we actually got that going was to say, we start with a simple thing which has a reasonable high benefit for the organization, and then start promoting that. Yeah, and that has created kind of a constant flow of stuff which goes to that team. Actually, it's a little bit oversubscribed, and we are continuously extending the capability we have there in terms of team size and people in order to address that demand. And especially, I have to say, in the COVID environment, which we were especially since beginning of March, there was a huge demand on putting that up. And due to the focus we had in the organization to solve problems, we also could do things in record time, which was good to have the organization up and standing. And on the technology capability, an issue we had is how to create the infrastructure across geographies to make sure that the bots can run across the geographies, which we solved by putting also people from our engineering team in there, so that we have easy access to the different solutions and to the different source systems we connect with the robotics thing. So that's how we set it up.
That's very interesting. Do you have any insight? Did you guys treat this as a custom software development project in the IT organization, or was it more of an overarching layer for that type of capability because of the variations in the data that you had to access and manipulate?
So it's actually organized outside of my application management organization. Yeah.
Okay.
So the team which sits with one of my domain leads, serving across the whole infrastructure and so the different parts of the organization. I've organized my organization in domains which serves which follows core business processes, and I've aligned technology to that. Yeah. But the RPA team sits in one of these stacks and goes across the whole organization. Because it's an interchangeable tool set and interchangeable skill serving all different processes across the bank. And what we did in terms of feeding it was kind of, we started in the operations team, which I run myself, and then we were able to expose it to the business. And once I could see what we can do with that, yeah, the demand was coming from all different parts of the business. It's a good thing at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. So it's basically set up like a services organization within very interesting structure. Maya, we covered this a little bit yesterday, but can you maybe elaborate for us a little bit on what your experience has been as far as kind of the underlying technical capabilities that have to be there inside an organization to be able to facilitate this and expedite adoption? The way you manage data, how far along on the maturity spectrum for automation in general the organization is. What are some of the key takeaways there? I'm sorry, it seems like we have lost your sound again.
Okay. Now I'm back. Sorry.
No worries.
So yeah, well, it's quite obvious to most of the companies that data is important if you want to implement artificial intelligence. But of course, you need to have consistent and high quality data, but also accessible data. So this is one of the main drivers or the main challenges many companies have. We see in many cases that this is also putting high demands on the corresponding systems. It is precisely here that we often see great challenges in my daily work, because practically all companies I see have grown IT systems. So there is indeed data, there's a lot of data basically, but it's not accessible, it's scattered, it's not consistent. And if you look at person data, customer data, which is specifically my field I'm working with, it's not reconciled. So you have the same customer in many systems, and you don't have the ability to kind of combine all that data and understand the person of that data. So you generate that 360-degree profile you need to understand what is really important about that customer. So this is one of the big challenges you do have on the technical side. In this context, it's of course also important to align the company-wide IT strategy accordingly, because in many cases, technical enablement, or in all cases, begins with the awareness of a very high IT level. And changes in this area, they, especially in large companies, take time. And this is a factor which should always be considered. And it's moving now. We see that companies are aware of it and also addressing that challenge. But especially in large companies, there are many people, human beings who also need to move, and this is taking time. So the technical factor is what we see is always also a human, very human factor. It's a question of culture, a question of people, a question of involving people, as we already heard before. So not just on operational level, also on C level. It's a question about having the right people in place and having their support to move forward.
That makes perfect sense. So basically, maturity from a data management perspective is a huge criteria, and then obviously education, right, and making sure that you have the right people in place to facilitate this. At NASDAQ, for example, the way we managed our AI team, it was part of a larger data management organization, right? Because at NASDAQ, we distribute a considerable amount of data to our customers, and internally, there was a separate unit within IT that was responsible for data management and data products. And part of that unit was allocated to specifically machine intelligence and AI. That was an interesting model, but it also, to a certain extent, stifles a little bit that sector, because again, it isolates it for one very specific business unit that has its own P&L, that has its own drivers, where the rest of the organization doesn't necessarily benefit quite as much, which is why I really like the model where it becomes a service organization overall, and anybody, you can manage demand and you can manage, they have to sell themselves, right, which is also a very important aspect. Luke, very quickly, anything else to add on the technical front? So definitely data maturity, but have you noticed anything else with the customers where it's, there's critical IT functions that need to be in place?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, data is the key. Actually, company have different strategy in terms of first having a clean data layer, and then moving to the analytics on AI components, or starting incrementally on cleaning the data step by step. But what we see also more and more is on the AI and analytics side, more and more very small, very targeted applications being implemented. Applications that really target a very small segment of your operating model. So on the one hand, a strong harmonization on the data layer, but then a lot of very small tools that integrate among each other in the application layer.
See that evolving? Are we going to go more towards the model where these tool sets are becoming easier and easier to maintain and work with for the business users, to basically empower them to create new and more dynamic business processes? Or is software development capability starting to become much more cost effective, where we will have those kind of more custom software development projects start to become available at scale and be able to leverage these technologies? Anybody want to just jump in with a couple of comments on that in the last couple of minutes?
It depends a little bit on the business construct in a way, yeah. At least the way I see it, it is anyhow a joint venture between the business and some technologists. Yeah, it depends what you do. If you do some AI stuff, yeah, you need really specialist knowledge, which you usually do not have in the business side. You need some business input, but for the time being, I see that more anchored in the technology side. with the skill set which requires the data scientist skill set, the kind of AI developer skill set. Yeah. On robotics, yeah, you have, from my perspective, it's a lot more mature and it's more standardized, at least in the environment we are, where the focus is a lot more on the business process knowledge and much less on the development skill set. Yeah, so I could see that moving to a business aligned or even a business process. So we are organizing. We have the technology really sitting in the technology, but we have cross-functional teams there, which doesn't matter at the end of the day whether it sits in the business or in IT, because it always has IT people and it has business people in the setup. Yeah, and the borderlines between the organizations is kind of fluid because they are self-enabled, self-powered, and self-engaged Scrum teams which do the work. Yeah, and they sit in some reporting structure and in some organizational structure for organizational purposes. But at the end of the day, they have a business purpose.
Great. No, I think that makes perfect sense. And what it sounds like basically that, robotics and automation are at a higher level of maturity. So there's tool sets available and that they're more specifically aligned with the business processes, and there's a lot more capabilities there that are much wider spread across the population of operational and business people that can operate those tools. Whereas AI still sits in a kind of lower maturity level where it still can be defined as tech-driven innovation, right? So it really requires the technologists to facilitate it. Organizational changes need to be implemented at a wider scale, and there's a lot of education that yet has to happen to be able to get this to scale. But over time, I think we see those things converging, and AI becomes much more accessible, and then has a greater impact on business process and automation across the enterprise.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, thank you guys very much. Hopefully this was a productive discussion, and looking forward to our next engagement together.
Thanks a lot for all of us. Thanks, Alex, for chairing this session. Jürgen, Luc, and Maya, it was a great pleasure to listen to you. And thanks also to the audience remaining with us and for all the nice comments. Now we're heading to the next panel. And there it is my great pleasure to introduce you to the chair of the panel, Christopher Ganz from ABB. ABB is one of our longest partner of Swiss Cognitive, and I'm proud to have you chairing this great session about manufacturing evolution with AI. Christopher Ganz has been driven IoT projects in ABB before the market called it actually IoT. But you're not that old, Christopher. It has been in his team and designed an ABB digital strategy and have then driven a number of topics at the intersection of R&D and digital. In digital buzzword, bingo, he is hard to beat, having worked out concept on predictive maintenance, digital twin, industrial AI, autonomous industrial systems, etc. Until its very recent closure, he has been looking for market and technology trends in ABB Future Labs. The only trend he hasn't figured out yet, and perhaps someone there can help him out, is what is the future of Christopher's field after the activities of ABB Future Labs. With him on the panel, we have Fazel Kajessian. Fazel is a postdoctoral researcher of urban energy system at the Swiss Federal Laboratories for Material Science and Technology. Prior to joining EMPA, he was assistant professor of building physics at the University of Nottingham in Ningbo, China, and visiting scholar at the Singapore ETH Center. He received a PhD from Politecnico di Milano, exploring the application of machine learning in building and energy audit. Currently, his research is focused on improving energy performance at the urban scale through AI and digital twins. The next is Klaus Diederich, and he makes building thinking. Klaus is a partner at Dresden Sommer and head of ICT. He is responsible for consulting on due digitalization and real estate for corporates and property companies. Together with his team, he has developed the smartest building in Europe, the Cube Berlin, as a customized smart building. I hope that after Corona, you will show us the building. In combination with human intelligence, the building will develop into a self-thinking building. Currently, Dresden Sommer is handling a project volume of over than 7 billion euro construction volume in the context of intelligent buildings and production facilities. The tipping point for intelligent building has been reached. Last but not least, we have with us Ter-Braack, also someone who is joining the Swiss cognitive community, I think, Tash, for about the last 4 years. Tash is a project manager in mechatronics at the Corporate Research and Technology Center at Hilti in Liechtenstein. Who doesn't know where Liechtenstein is? It's actually our close neighbor. He creates and leads projects that will change the way the construction industry will work 10 to 15 years from now. He has broken new ground for machine learning and AI-driven projects. Previously, Tash worked as an assistant professor of robotics, creating innovative solutions and automation for small and mid businesses in the Netherlands. He holds a doctorate in medical engineering from the University of California, Davis. The stage is yours. Thanks a lot for remaining with us.
Thank you very much, Dalit, for this nice introduction. When I looked into this panel, the title of the panel is actually Manufacturing Evolution with AI, but when I look at the panelists, they actually share an interesting aspect, and maybe we can put more light on that one. Everybody on the panel is actually somehow related to buildings. And now instead of building some industrial equipment, maybe we can talk about how to build, operate and maintain buildings from the early stage when the building is actually built to the point of operating it, and how AI can lead us there. With that, I would like to start with Tosh, who is in a company who is actually helping companies to build buildings and providing the tools for all that. When looking into the past of AI, we get the feeling that distinguishing cats from dogs is probably the most important thing there is. Everybody is like to distinguish cats from dogs. But from your exposure to AI in your job in an industrial application, what is a cool thing in industry where AI helps us to solve problems that were not possible before? Can you have some examples from your experience?
Well, I can give you some of the more mature examples just to check everybody can hear me. Yeah, perfect. So obviously, a lot of the things we do are kind of secret, but I would say that in general, one of the most elegant solutions that we have is always thinking of the human working together with the AI. And so it's really some sort of capability extender. And when you think of what a machine is good at and what a human is good at, they're very complementary. They don't really supplement. And so a lot of applications we've solved or really supported the human with extremely high speed thinking in very basic tasks. So a piece of AI for us can think about, 5 microseconds of a signal and use 10 years of experience and apply it. And that in a very repetitive, mundane environment really provides humans with something that they can rely on, that, they grow to love the tool more and more because it's something you can depend on. And so for us, a lot of the examples are more in some digital signal processing, of course, because we're working with the hardware. We aren't limited to that. We also have a lot of applications in measuring and in also the project planning. Like you said, cats from dogs. We have something similar where, of course, we're looking at what's a dangerous situation, what's not a dangerous situation. And so basically we recycle the cats and dogs algorithms, but put in, of course, different players. And then, that can yield some very interesting results for some, like I said, basic, very strong, reliable equipment at the end of the day.
Thank you very much. Interesting to see the application of cats and dogs in your industry. If we move that forward to Klaus, while Tar's equipment is going away when the building is being built. Your equipment is actually in the building when it's operated and when people are in there. And in the introduction, Dalit has mentioned this smartest building in Europe. Can you talk about that? What is great about that? An application that might not be obvious to the audience. How you make that intelligent? You are on mute.
Now, I hope it works. You can hear me? It's perfect. Yes, I think the nicest example is at the moment we have COVID-19. Yeah, we are sitting at our home office, but our building doesn't know it, but I didn't know it. And that is a problem that we have. There is no connection between the people and the building. And that is so different when we are talking about the Cube Berlin. In the Cube Berlin, it's the smartest building in Europe because we integrated artificial intelligence and 3,750 sensors. And the brain, that is very important. We integrate a brain that networks with technical systems that are not networked with each other today, such as building automation, access, burglar alarm system, locker, fire alarm system, lighting, etc. And it is designed by the rules security by design. And it has a cybersecurity strategy, and it is GPDR ready. Yeah, and in the future, the Cube will be the self-thinking building in combination with artificial intelligence. That is the difference, because at the moment we create nice buildings, but there is no connection to the data. What can I do with the data? And we have to analyze the data, and so we can optimize the building. For us, it's very important. Never changing running system was yesterday, but that is normal in the market at the moment, and we have to change it. And the Cube is the smartest building, not with so many sensors. Yeah, that's not the important thing. We are thinking about the wishes and the problems about the people who lives in the building. Yeah, we are the stakeholders, and we have wishes and we have expectations. And we analyzed what are the expectations in the first phase. And when we create a building like the Cube, that is customized and not a smart building.
Very interesting. I would be looking forward to the building talking to me. Sounds like a Disney movie. If we take it even further from the building, Faisal, in your introduction, it was mentioned that you're in the urban energy system laboratory. So from the single building, you take it to the city. Where does AI fit in there? What cool stuff have you solved in your approach there, in your work there?
Thank you. Well, our application of AI is a little bit on the research side because we're a research institute. But what you're trying to do is that we try to address the barriers that maybe for the industry it's probably too expensive to address. And what we do is that we look at, for example, some drawbacks of certain algorithms, and we try to come up with ways to address them. For example, we try to find an optimal way to control a building, and this is actually an industry standard, and the industry does it very well. But then we look at the methods that we design a controller, and we realize that how much of the uncertainty, of the unknown have we taken into account. Our controller systems can be very much reliant on the people, and people have inherently very stochastic behavior. And what we try to do is that we try to hallucinate in a nerdy way what other scenarios can people behave. And then we can test if our controller is actually performing as we expected or not. And we can do it for maybe 1 or 2 buildings, but expanding it to an urban scale is very difficult because we are faced with challenges of privacy, and people may not be comfortable sharing their data. And so what we try to do is that we learn information from a small set of buildings in a way that is applicable to an urban scale, and then we test if we have adequately learned enough information to apply it in a larger scale.
Thank you very much. Maybe I dig into that part. You touched on an interesting topic, which is the scalability, which from my own experience I know is not an easy thing. Did you have to go beyond what is currently more in the consumer space to adapt to your more industrial application, or could you mention a little bit on what direction your research took to make that possible?
Well, part of it comes from the infrastructure. We have a demonstrator, which is kind of a vertical district with different units, and each unit has a different, let's say, occupancy type or a different end use. One is a gym, another is a residential building, another is an office, and we use these information from the buildings to understand, in general, how the occupants may behave. But then we reach out to industry, and we have industry partners to test what we have learned on a larger scale, on a district scale, and then we get the feedback and adjust it back on the vertical district or the energy hub that we have.
Okay. Klaus, maybe can you walk us through a little bit what kind of particular obstacles did you have to master to get to the most intelligent building? When you take AI out of the box, was it able to do everything you expected, or was there any unexpected twists in there? How you arrived there? Any particular advancements in technology that you had to solve in order to really get to that quite impressive result?
Yeah, Tristan Salomon operates an innovation hub at the University of the RWTH in Aachen in cooperation with the Industrial 4.0 factory. Yeah, and that's very important because we are working together with the university in order to be able to test all the technical equipments in advance. We have set up a test and demonstration center in Aachen, in our building at the university, where we can network and test the connectivity and the products with software and existing hardware systems and penetration tests. And that is very important because we have a knowledge that I think 85% of the IoT sensors in the market doesn't work. Yeah, they are nice, yeah, but it doesn't work, and they are not. There is often not the right connectivity. We have the problems when we are talking about penetration tests. Yeah, there is no cybersecurity rules, and we have to analyze these before, because I think when you integrate sensors like LoRaWAN or Zigbee or Z-Wave, yeah, better the new interfaces in the market, and you have not the right interface protocol, yeah, you have a big problem, because it's a little bit like a Switzerland cheese. Yeah, and it's very easy to hack the building, and that is normal in the market. The whole BMS system in the buildings, there is no cybersecurity strategy, and that is for us very important to redesign the building, not only the new buildings, also the old building, because it's very easy to hack the building, and we tested together with the Russians and the Israelis, the best in hacking, I think, and it was unbelievable. It is very easy to hack a BMS system, yeah, and so you can get the control over the air, over the cooling, over the excess. Yeah, you can lock the excess, and that is unbelievable at the moment in the market. And that is not only in the office, that's also in the healthcare branches or in the sectors or in retail. Everything and everywhere, it's the same problem. And for us, it's very important to understand what is the digitization potentials at the moment. And when we are talking to our customers, we are talking about process optimization, we are talking about business transformation, making new business models, like to think like Uber and Airbnb. They have nothing, but they have data, and that is very new in the real estate market, because we are thinking about to rent square meters and to sell square meters. That is normal. And we have to think about the next level energy optimization, to cut off the energy, to analyze how many people are in the building is different. And we have to reduce the operation cost, and we can optimize the asset management, property management, facility management. And the building must be interesting for the war for talents. Yeah, that is very important for the corporates to get the right people, the young generation, like Generation Z, and also the data collection and data vending and data analyst. That is, I think, the view for the real estate market in the next years, and that is totally different, like the normal way in the real estate market at the moment.
Very, very insightful. Tosh, we've heard scale is a problem, security is a problem, danger was mentioned before. Anything you can add to that particular industrial environment where you had to go beyond what is available in distinguishing cats from dogs?
Well, I mean, I'm quite far ahead of the actual implementation since I'm in research. But from the things we've seen, one of the tough points is also to think, do the little exercise. If this was working perfectly, what would it look like? And that kind of also begs the question always for me. So where is this AI working? And often you'll find like something, if you're going to do something edge or something cloud or something server, that's always a big question. It'll change the entire design. And now they even have something between edge and cloud. They call it the fog. And so everywhere they're trying to find a little niche to stick it to make sure what it's going to do. And also the simplest thing is, let's say the AI is on board and it's doing its thing. How does the user know? How does the answer come out? Is there a light? What's the interface? And really thinking about those aspects. Sometimes a theoretical solution, then in practice, you find out that there are a lot of issues that you have to iron out first to make it possible.
Thanks a lot. I think we have quite a full set of very special boundary conditions. I would like to come back to Klaus on this most intelligent building. It's really a fascinating idea. Who would you think would benefit from the intelligence of the building? Is that the operator? Is that the inhabitant? Who, in what way would I benefit from the intelligence of the building in living there or operating it? Can you go a little bit on the value of your solutions there of such a building?
Yeah, I think it depends. We have to think about the process optimization in the asset management, property management, facility management. Because one of our clients is the DECA and the Allianz, they're insurance companies in Germany and worldwide. And it's an example. The DECA has 650 buildings worldwide. And their rent per year is about 2.5 billion euros. Yeah, and the cost for asset management, property management, facility management is about 10%. When we can reduce only 1% for them, it's unbelievable. So we have to think about the data, and we have a problem. We have no data. We have Excel lists. Yeah, and everything is missing. Yeah, we are working with SAP, with ERP systems, but we have not the connection to the systems. Whereas we are working with data, with data silos, and that's the problem. And we have to redesign all the things. And it's also interesting for the tenants. Yeah, it's possible to make my process better when I have an intelligent building. And many of the biggest corporates are looking for intelligent building. And I think the market in the future changed. The intelligent building, I get in the future more money for it. I get more rent for it. Yeah, and we see it. It's not only the cute Berlin at the moment. We are working in Cologne with a company. The ship, the building is also ready. It's a startup, and now the startup have to become a project developer in real estate. Or we are working with the Art Invest. Art Invest is the biggest project developer in Germany. Yeah, and he says all the new buildings has to be digitized, and that is important. Or we are working in Berlin in the Quartier Heidestraße. It's a smart city. I think it's the biggest, one of the biggest projects in Europe. 10,000 people, but only 1,000 parking places. You have to bring the connection together. Mobility changed. We are talking about share economy. Yeah, and all the things we integrated, and we integrate in this 2 years before, service possibilities such delivering services, bring and fetch services for gastronomy and retail, along with communication platforms for the resident. Now we have COVID-19. It is very interesting to have it, but in the Quartier Heidestraße, we designed it 2 years before. And I think we have to think about a new vision for the real estate market in the future.
Very interesting. I just want to clarify that you probably didn't say that it's very interesting to have COVID-19. You mentioned you have an intelligent building, probably.
Yeah, that's it. I think COVID-19 is for us, it's a digitization booster. Yeah.
That is a very good point that I have observed in other areas as well. Maybe Fossil, can you go into a little bit on where would you see the value of the things you're researching on? What will be better once you have your solution out in the market? Who benefits and in what ways from those kind of solutions?
Right. Well, I think that it starts foremost with the occupants of the buildings, because our primary objective is to provide them with comfortable indoor conditions, both in summer and in winter. And if we're able to manage that, at the same time, we also want to save some energy while providing the comfort for the occupants. So I would say that maybe the price of the energy will play an important role, but at the same time, it's environmentally friendly while providing comfort for the occupants. The second is designing the energy system in a larger scale, in an urban scale, where we need information not only from a single building, but from a group of buildings, and then thinking about the communication of energy between these buildings. While one building may be in need of energy, the other one may be producing it and have extra. So what is the optimal way actually to circulate this energy within like a grid? And these questions can be answered by tapping into artificial intelligence and benefiting from, let's say, the features that we learn with artificial intelligence about a certain community.
Thanks a lot. Tosh, the same question goes to you. You're more in a B2B environment. You wouldn't deal directly with the people living in these buildings. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on where you see the value of the AI solutions that you're providing for your customers?
Well, I think I said mainly from the beginning was just really support the human element, since in our industry, it's a lot of humans working together. And it's also very complex. The buildings are getting bigger, they're getting more customized. And so we really need to leverage this form of automation. And I like to refer to it as just good statistics. Like you're just, that back in the day was just statistics. And now it became so accessible and the tools are so friendly that your imagination is just the limit of using it. And so I really feel like for us, that's the main part of how we leverage it. And then we try to be a bit conservative, but like I said, as time progresses, you can build on these systems and they can work together, saving more data and then amplifying the power. So you really have to just start with the basic steps. But really to summarize it for me would be to take the boring work, the stuff that's tedious, this out of the equation so the humans can do what they're good at.
I think that Klaus, you unmuted. You want to comment on that? Feel free. I mean, we can easily have a discussion here.
I think we have to redesign our principle when we are designing buildings. At the moment, there is no different like 20 years. Yeah, it's the same. And we have to take the human being as a model for the development of an intelligent building. because we said since we as humans are equipped with brain, sensors, organs, eyes, taste, touch, and sensory organs are networks via nerve fibers. Yeah, when we are thinking about us, we are intelligent. We have to create a building like us, and that's why we are intelligent. And our buildings of today do not have this. That's the problem, and because this does not exist, and we are talking only about a BMS system. Yeah, but connecting the heating system in the air. And we think open API interfaces are the first choice in the future, and not old interfaces like Modbus and KNX. Yeah, it's old-fashioned. Yeah, I finished my study in 1990. Yeah, and that was the old way. And these interfaces we integrated now in our buildings. That is the biggest mistake that we can do at the moment. And API interfaces together with artificial intelligence, that is our vision for the buildings in the future.
I think you mentioned an interesting part, and I think we saw this kind of coming with Tosh, who's building tools to build the building. You then put the stuff into the building to operate it, make it more intelligent. And I think you have a very good point. Is the intelligent building of the future really the type of construction that we have today, which then again have an impact on the type of tools that we need to use to build it. Tosh, you wanna comment on that?
Well, actually, we're our business actually a little bit more than just the tools. We also have a lot of the anchors and installation systems, and of course, we're thinking about the entire ecosystem, and to really also make things that are intelligent for in case there's damage to the building, and that's also very much on our roadmap to have a look at and to see what we can do with it, and then eventually we'll all meet in the middle with operations people and you know what's actually been put into the building when it was made. However, yeah, the lag in technology is really scary sometimes to think, okay, how do we, it would be wonderful if a building just had an open API and we could send firmware updates over the air. I mean, then we'd be set, right? And so the problem is that the design life of a building is about 50 years, if not getting longer. And then retrofits, you know, all these different angles, we have to kind of weasel it in. So we're kind of in a hybrid phase, kind of like with the hybrid cars going on to full electric. And I think we have to see it that too. We have to, you know, break ground, no pun intended, to get in these little pieces, and then we learn how to do them, and we also warrant the investment once people start seeing the returns, and then it can grow from there.
I think if I interpret the messages from my background here, we need to conclude slowly. If you have one or two sentences that you could give to the audience from the learning, we've touched on many interesting industrial challenges for AI. But if you would be able to give some advice to the audience on how to approach these kind of problems in industrial AI, what would that be? One or two sentences quickly. Tosh, maybe first.
Sure. Mine is a resounding: invest in the people you have. They are the experts, and in their minds lie the ideas that you can then automate eventually, have AI do for you.
Thank you very much. So true. Fazel, anything from your side? What is your recommendation?
I would say that similar to humans, AI is also prone to bias. So it's very important how we look at the data and what samples we pick. Are we over bias on new buildings or retrofit buildings? And it's very important to read that very clearly before jumping to conclusions.
Absolutely. Klaus, final recommendations
I think
for the audience?
Yeah, I think 90% of the companies has no digitization strategy. That is a problem. We need a digitization strategy in the first phase, and then we can think about what can we do with the production and the buildings. And I think when we have this, that's the right way.
Thank you very much. So if you allow me to briefly summarize the discussion, I think we touched on the interface between human and we touched on the interface between the humans and the AI. I think that is an area that is not really explored. Scalability has been mentioned. I've seen that very often a challenge, not considered early on. Security was mentioned. If the more we put into our buildings, the more we might be surprised about how the building all of a sudden behaves and locks us out. Privacy, I think, particularly in this area where you cannot really get the human out of the picture. I mean, it's basically we build buildings for humans, so that there will always be concerns and the right balance to be found. Architectural issues, edge cloud, definitely something to be considered. I think we heard a lot of interesting things, a lot to be considered, a lot of challenges applying AI in an industrial, in this case, in a building construction type environment. Challenging future, but I think we're seeing very, very interesting. I mean, the most intelligent building, and coming back to that impressive statement there, that's definitely an interesting place to live in. And as you see from my background, to bring a Art Nouveau building to the height of the current technology, it's basically by the way, a hotel in Switzerland. That is a challenge, the installed base, existing buildings to bring new technologies in there. That's also a big challenge. And I think with that, thank you all for this very, very interesting discussion, and looking forward to further discussions in the background. There were no questions from the audience, so we can conclude here. Thank you all very much.
Thanks a lot. It was very exciting, and I'm looking very much forward how the houses and of my grandchildren will look like. Talking about houses, your background, Christopher, is really tempting. So thanks a lot, Christopher, for chairing this session. Thank you, Klaus. Thank you, Fazel. Thank you, Tash, being with us. I hope you will stay with us now. After my closing remarks, as mentioned, here in Switzerland, it's evening. So either grab your glass of champagne or gin, or your coffee or orange juice if you're still in the morning. Before that, I would like to cover a few things that we discussed in the last 3 hours. We covered AI from space to the smartest building. We discussed the importance of collaboration on global, on national, but especially also inter-corporates within your own company. We exchanged on the power of ecosystem without boundaries, and we made a call for C-suites not to delegate responsibility for the topic of AI, empower innovation through POCs, be brave and allocate budget, and especially also allow failures. This is how we experience and how we can get to the kind of unicorns also within our own business. We want to have, or actually we need to have a digital strategy to know where we're heading to. Sorry, I just talk too much. I definitely need a drink. So we need a strategy, as Klaus said, and also Nicolas Bürer, but we don't need a strategy for 5 or more years. We have to remain on the top of the subject exchange so we can speed up the process. Together we share about experience and making sure we're on the right trace. So now, thanks a lot for all these encouraging comments on the chat, on WhatsApp, on email, on LinkedIn, on Twitter. I'm very flattered, I'm very happy, and I really hope to see you in person, either here or somewhere, as soon as we can travel again. But now I'm inviting you with my team, Swiss Cognitive, to join us for virtual drinks. We're going to open the video, so whoever wants to open his video and share his data, just make sure you're addressed. Then we will be more than happy to exchange further. Thanks again, and most important, stay healthy. We are going for a summer break, and we'll be back sometimes end of August. We will date you up. Now, please, Andy.
Hello. Yes, Nicolas. Go to the backstage. On the streaming, we can't open now the video. Go to backstage and we cheer together. See you soon. Bye bye. Nein.
you.